On December 26, 1996, snow blanketed Boulder, Colorado. While many families were still basking in the post-Christmas spirit, a frantic 911 call mobilized law enforcement across the city. Patsy Ramsey, the mother of child beauty queen JonBenét Ramsey, made the call in a state of panic. She declared, "My daughter has been kidnapped. We found a ransom note." That call marked the beginning of one of the most mysterious and controversial cases in American history. The Ramsey family was known as a model of American upper-class perfection. John Ramsey, JonBenét's father, was a successful businessman heading a high-tech company with an enviable salary. Patsy Ramsey, her mother, was a former Miss West Virginia known for her refined, elegant lifestyle. The Ramseys lived in a luxurious mansion in Boulder, projecting the image of the ideal American family. JonBenét, their 6-year-old daughter, was the pride and joy of the family. She wasn't just beautiful and intelligent but also immensely talented. From a young age, JonBenét participated in numerous child beauty pageants, quickly capturing the judges' hearts with her charm and confidence. By the time tragedy struck, JonBenét had already won several prestigious titles in child beauty competitions. Early on the morning of December 26, the Ramseys woke to chaos. They discovered a 2-page ransom note on their staircase, demanding $118,000 in cash, an oddly specific amount that coincided with a recent bonus John Ramsey had received at work. Patsy immediately called 911, her voice trembling and frantic as she relayed the horrifying discovery to the dispatcher. It was the kind of call that no parent should ever have to make. The note's demands were clear, yet its tone and length were peculiar. It began with the ominous salutation, "Listen carefully," and ended with a chilling warning not to contact the authorities, claiming that doing so would result in the immediate execution of their daughter. The ransom demanded was small for a family of the Ramseys' wealth, and the meticulous phrasing of the letter left investigators puzzled. Within minutes of the call, law enforcement arrived at the Ramsey home. The family's sprawling mansion, adorned with holiday decorations, quickly turned into a crime scene. Officers began their investigation with the ransom note, carefully bagging it as evidence while searching the premises for any signs of forced entry. Initially, it seemed like a classic kidnapping case. But as the hours passed, the story grew darker. After nearly 7 hours of searching the home, Detective Linda Arndt made a horrifying discovery. In the basement, hidden behind a locked door, she found JonBenét's lifeless body. She was lying on the floor, wrapped in a white blanket. Her hands were bound above her head with a nylon cord, and there was duct tape covering her mouth. A garrote, fashioned from a piece of cord and the broken handle of a paintbrush, had been used to strangle her. The scene was chilling. The juxtaposition of the warm, festive decorations upstairs and the cold, grim reality of the basement crime scene left investigators and family members in shock. The house, which had been filled with joy just days earlier, now held an unspeakable tragedy. The discovery of JonBenét's body shifted the investigation's focus. What had initially been treated as a kidnapping case now became a homicide. The ransom note, once the central piece of evidence, now raised even more questions. Why would a kidnapper leave such a detailed note and then kill their victim without attempting to collect the ransom? And why was JonBenét's body still in the house? The ransom note quickly became the centerpiece of the investigation. It was unlike any ransom note investigators had encountered before. At 2.5 pages long, it was unnecessarily verbose and filled with inconsistencies. Experts in handwriting analysis and linguistic profiling were brought in to examine the note. They pointed out peculiarities in its language, including phrases like foreign faction and SBTC, which were unfamiliar and cryptic. More troubling was the fact that the paper and pen used to write the note were found inside the Ramsey home. Investigators concluded that the note had likely been written after the family had gone to bed, raising the possibility that the perpetrator was either extraordinarily brazen or someone familiar with the household. The amount of ransom, $118,000, also raised eyebrows. It was an oddly specific figure that matched the exact amount of John Ramsey's recent work bonus. This detail suggested that the author of the note had some level of knowledge about the family's finances, further complicating the case. When investigators first entered the Ramsey home on the morning of December 26, they were met with an eerie contrast. The house, adorned with festive Christmas decorations, seemed like a warm family retreat. But as they moved further inside, it became apparent that something was terribly wrong. The first-floor layout was expansive, with a living room, dining area, and kitchen that seemed untouched. There were no immediate signs of forced entry at any of the doors or windows. This lack of disturbance would later become a focal point of the investigation. If an intruder had entered the house, how had they done so without leaving any trace, however, as officers moved to the staircase? Their attention was drawn to the handwritten ransom note placed conspicuously on one of the steps. The note's placement seemed deliberate, as if to ensure it was the first thing the family or investigators would see. Its length and verbosity puzzled detectives, who expected a brief and direct demand in typical ransom cases. The basement, where JonBenét's body was eventually found, was a labyrinth of rooms and storage spaces. Officers described it as cluttered and dimly lit, with several areas that were difficult to access. The room where JonBenét's body was discovered was behind a heavy wooden door that required a deliberate effort to open. This detail led investigators to believe that whoever placed her there was familiar with the layout of the house. JonBenét's body was discovered wrapped in a white blanket, lying on the cold cement floor. Her head showed signs of blunt force trauma, and the garrote around her neck appeared to have been tightened with significant force. The ligature was fashioned using a nylon cord and the broken handle of a paintbrush, which investigators later found had been taken from Patsy Ramsey's art supplies. There were also indications of possible sexual assault, although the evidence was inconclusive. This finding added a layer of complexity to the case, as it suggested a motive beyond ransom or revenge. Yet, the ransom note's existence seemed at odds with the brutality of the crime, raising further questions about the perpetrator's intent. Several aspects of the crime scene led investigators to suspect that certain elements had been staged. The placement of the ransom note, with its peculiar length and overly detailed demands, did not align with the evidence of a sudden, violent crime. Furthermore, the meticulous wrapping of JonBenét's body in a blanket and the use of a garrote implied a level of calculation that contradicted the chaotic nature of the act. Detectives noted that the garrote's handle had been fashioned from a broken paintbrush found in the house, further suggesting that the perpetrator had used materials readily available within the home. This detail, combined with the lack of forced entry, strengthened the theory that the crime had been committed by someone with intimate knowledge of the house and its occupants. The forensic examination of the crime scene revealed both significant findings and frustrating gaps. Trace amounts of foreign DNA were discovered on JonBenét's clothing, but they did not match anyone in the Ramsey family or any known suspects at the time. This discovery complicated the narrative, as it pointed to the possibility of an unknown intruder while also leaving investigators with no clear leads. Additionally, the autopsy revealed undigested pineapple in JonBenét's stomach, suggesting that she had eaten it shortly before her death. A bowl of pineapple was found in the kitchen, with fingerprints from both Patsy and JonBenét's brother, Burke, further muddying the timeline of events. The crime scene handling was also widely criticized. Friends and family members were allowed to move freely throughout the house before it was properly secured, leading to potential contamination of evidence. The decision to allow John Ramsey to carry JonBenét's body upstairs further complicated forensic analysis, as it disrupted the original positioning of the body and introduced additional variables to an already chaotic scene. The discovery of JonBenét's body in the basement raised more questions than it answered. Why was her body left in the house if the crime had been intended as a kidnapping? Who had written the ransom note, and why did its tone and content seem inconsistent with the actions of the perpetrator? And most importantly, who could have committed such a heinous crime against a child in what should have been the safety of her own home? The crime scene at the Ramsey house was a puzzle with missing pieces. Each new detail uncovered seemed to deepen the mystery, leaving investigators and the public to grapple with a case that defied simple explanations. As the investigation progressed, the contradictions and complexities of the evidence would only grow, making the JonBenét Ramsey case one of the most enigmatic and polarizing criminal investigations in history. From the outset, the Ramsey family found themselves at the center of suspicion. For investigators, it was an all-too-common scenario, a murder within a household where no signs of forced entry existed. The first rule of criminal investigations is to start with those closest to the victim. In JonBenét's case, this meant her parents, John and Patsy, and her older brother, Burke. One of the most significant reasons for suspicion was the ransom note. Handwriting analysis quickly became a cornerstone of the investigation. Patsy Ramsey's handwriting samples bore similarities to the ransom note, according to some experts. Although a definitive match was never declared, the findings were enough to fuel speculation that Patsy may have written the note as part of a cover-up. John Ramsey, too, faced his share of scrutiny. Critics questioned his decision to hire legal counsel almost immediately after JonBenét's body was found. For many, this action suggested a defensive posture rather than a grieving father seeking justice. Additionally, his discovery of JonBenét's body in the basement raised questions about why he and his friends were the ones conducting the search rather than law enforcement. Burke Ramsey, JonBenét's 9-year-old brother, was another figure who came under the microscope. Although his young age made him an unlikely suspect, some theorists speculated that JonBenét's death could have been the result of an accidental altercation between siblings. This theory posited that Patsy and John might have staged the crime scene to protect their son from prosecution. Parallel to the scrutiny of the Ramseys, investigators explored the possibility of an intruder. The theory hinged on several pieces of evidence that suggested the presence of an outsider. For example, an open basement window with a scuff mark nearby led some to believe that a perpetrator had entered the house through this point of access. The unidentified foreign DNA found on JonBenét's clothing further bolstered the intruder theory. However, critics of this theory argued that the DNA could have been the result of secondary transfer, such as contamination from manufacturing or packaging processes. Without additional evidence to corroborate the presence of an outsider, the theory remained inconclusive. Witness reports added another layer of intrigue. Some neighbors claimed to have heard a scream in the early hours of December 26, followed by eerie silence. Others reported seeing a suspicious individual near the Ramsey home in the days leading up to the murder. These accounts, while compelling, lacked the concrete evidence needed to pinpoint an intruder as the perpetrator. As the investigation unfolded, media coverage of the case turned into a circus. The Ramseys' wealth and social standing made them prime targets for public fascination and judgment. Tabloids published sensationalist headlines, often implicating the family members without substantial evidence. One of the most damaging narratives was the portrayal of Patsy Ramsey as a controlling, overbearing mother who had pushed JonBenét into the highly competitive world of child beauty pageants. This narrative painted a picture of a family obsessed with image, willing to go to extreme lengths to maintain their facade of perfection. The public's fascination with the case led to a proliferation of theories, some bordering on the absurd. From secret satanic cults to disgruntled business rivals of John Ramsey, the list of potential suspects grew longer with each passing. The initial hours following the discovery of JonBenét's body were marred by significant procedural errors that would haunt the investigation for years. As police officers arrived at the Ramsey home, they failed to secure the property as a crime scene. Friends, family members, and even clergy were allowed to enter and exit freely, inadvertently disturbing evidence. This mishandling complicated efforts to reconstruct the timeline of events and identify crucial details about the perpetrator. Perhaps the most controversial decision was allowing John Ramsey to carry JonBenét's body from the basement to the living room. While John's actions were likely driven by grief and shock, moving the body altered its positioning, potentially destroying forensic evidence. Additionally, the failure to immediately secure the basement, the primary crime scene, resulted in a loss of critical trace evidence. Even within the basement itself, key areas were overlooked. The window believed to be a potential entry point for an intruder was not properly examined until days later. By then, any fingerprints or other trace evidence had been compromised. Officers also failed to collect comprehensive samples from the house, leaving gaps in the forensic narrative. Despite the technological advances of the 1990s, the forensic investigation into JonBenét's murder was riddled with gaps. While trace amounts of unidentified DNA were found on JonBenét's clothing, investigators could not determine its origin. Some experts theorized that the DNA might have been the result of secondary transfer, contamination during manufacturing or packaging, casting doubt on its relevance to the crime. The autopsy report provided valuable but ambiguous information. JonBenét had suffered blunt force trauma to the head, consistent with being struck by a heavy object. Additionally, ligature marks on her neck indicated that a garrote had been used to strangle her. The garrote, made from a nylon cord and the broken handle of a paintbrush, was found to have been fashioned using materials from Patsy Ramsey's art supplies. This discovery raised questions about whether the crime had been premeditated or an act of desperation. Furthermore, undigested pineapple was found in JonBenét's stomach, suggesting she had eaten it shortly before her death. Investigators discovered a bowl of pineapple in the kitchen, bearing fingerprints from both Patsy and Burke Ramsey. This detail deepened the mystery surrounding the timeline of events on the night of the murder. The ransom note, arguably the most peculiar piece of evidence, also suffered from poor handling. Multiple individuals, including police officers and family members, had touched the note before it was secured, contaminating potential fingerprints. Handwriting analysis yielded inconclusive results, with some experts noting similarities to Patsy Ramsey's handwriting, while others disagreed. This lack of definitive answers left investigators grasping at straws. As the investigation progressed, tensions between the Boulder Police Department and the Ramsey family escalated. From the outset, the Ramseys felt that they were being unfairly targeted. Their decision to hire legal counsel and private investigators within days of JonBenét's death fueled public suspicion. Critics argued that these actions reflected guilt, while supporters contended that the Ramseys were simply protecting themselves from a biased investigation. This adversarial dynamic was exacerbated by frequent leaks to the media. Sensitive information, including details from the autopsy report and the contents of the ransom note, appeared in tabloid headlines, fueling speculation and damaging the integrity of the investigation. The Boulder Police Department faced criticism for its inability to control the narrative, while the Ramseys accused law enforcement of conducting a witch hunt. One particularly contentious moment occurred during an interview with Detective Linda Arndt. Arndt later claimed that she felt threatened while alone with John Ramsey, describing the experience as intense and unsettling. This statement, coupled with her belief that the case had been mishandled from the beginning, added another layer of controversy to an already convoluted investigation. The media frenzy surrounding the JonBenét Ramsey case created an atmosphere of relentless scrutiny and speculation. National and local news outlets dedicated extensive coverage to the case, turning it into a sensationalized spectacle. The image of JonBenét in her pageant costumes became a symbol of innocence lost, captivating and polarizing the public. This media attention placed immense pressure on law enforcement to solve the case quickly. As public interest grew, so did the proliferation of theories, some plausible, others absurd. From allegations of a botched kidnapping to conspiracy theories involving secret societies, the noise surrounding the case made it increasingly difficult for investigators to focus on tangible evidence. The Ramseys, meanwhile, became the subject of public fascination and judgment. Patsy Ramsey, in particular, was vilified for her perceived obsession with JonBenét's pageant career. Critics accused her of exposing JonBenét to undue pressure and danger, while supporters defended her as a loving mother who was unfairly targeted by a judgmental public. In the years following JonBenét's death, several opportunities to resolve the case were missed. Advances in DNA technology eventually allowed investigators to develop a more detailed profile of the unidentified DNA found on JonBenét's clothing. However, the sample did not match any known individuals in law enforcement databases, leaving the intruder theory unresolved. Similarly, efforts to re-examine the ransom note using modern linguistic analysis tools yielded intriguing but inconclusive results. While some phrases in the note suggested familiarity with law enforcement procedures, others appeared deliberately misleading. The true author of the note remains unknown. Forensic experts also revisited the physical evidence, including the garrote and the marks on JonBenét's body. Some concluded that the crime was the result of an accidental death staged to look like a kidnapping, while others maintained that it was a calculated act of violence. These conflicting interpretations underscore the enduring complexity of the case. The mishandling of the JonBenét Ramsey investigation serves as a cautionary tale for law enforcement agencies worldwide. Procedural errors, combined with the pressures of media scrutiny and public opinion, derailed the pursuit of justice for JonBenét. Decades later, her case remains unsolved, a haunting reminder of the fragility of truth in the face of chaos, despite the passage of time. The JonBenét Ramsey case continues to captivate and divide. For some, it represents a failure of the justice system. For others, it is a symbol of the dangers of media sensationalism. Above all, it is a tragedy that robbed a young girl of her life and left a family forever scarred by loss and suspicion. The JonBenét Ramsey case, even after decades of scrutiny, remains an emblem of unresolved mysteries. Since the morning of December 26, 1996, countless theories have emerged, evidence has been re-examined, and new technologies have been applied to forensic findings. Yet, the question persists: who killed JonBenét Ramsey? This final part delves into the analysis of unresolved questions, recent advancements, and the broader implications of the case. Over the years, advancements in forensic science have allowed for the re-evaluation of evidence collected at the crime scene. The DNA sample found on JonBenét's clothing, initially thought to be a breakthrough, has been reanalyzed multiple times. In 2008, prosecutors announced that the DNA did not match any member of the Ramsey family, seemingly exonerating them from the crime. However, the origins of the DNA remain a mystery, with some experts suggesting it could be unrelated to the murder, stemming from secondary transfer during clothing manufacturing. Similarly, the ransom note continues to baffle investigators and analysts. Handwriting experts have debated its authorship for decades. While some have pointed to Patsy Ramsey as the possible author due to similarities in writing style, others have highlighted inconsistencies that suggest otherwise. Modern linguistic tools have been used to parse the note for hidden patterns or clues. But none have yielded definitive answers. The garrote, fashioned from a nylon cord and a broken paintbrush handle, also raises troubling questions. The use of materials from within the Ramsey home suggests familiarity with the environment, lending credence to theories implicating someone close to the family. At the same time, its construction and application imply a level of premeditation and sophistication inconsistent with a crime of opportunity. From the outset, many have suspected the Ramsey family of being involved in JonBenét's death. Critics have pointed to the lack of forced entry, the suspicious circumstances surrounding the ransom note, and inconsistencies in the family's accounts. Patsy Ramsey's perceived emotional demeanor and Burke Ramsey's young age have both been scrutinized under the lens of public suspicion. Proponents of this theory argue that the crime could have been an accidental death covered up by the family to protect a loved one. The pineapple in JonBenét's stomach, combined with fingerprints on the kitchen bowl, has fueled speculation that a late-night altercation between siblings may have led to the tragedy. However, no concrete evidence has ever been found to implicate the Ramseys directly. The intruder theory gained traction due to the unidentified DNA and the discovery of an open basement window. Proponents suggest that someone with malicious intent entered the house during the night and killed JonBenét before fleeing the scene. Witness accounts of strange individuals seen near the Ramsey home before the murder bolster this theory. Critics of the intruder theory, however, point to the lack of conclusive evidence, such as footprints or fingerprints, supporting the presence of an outsider. Additionally, the crime's apparent staging, including the lengthy ransom note and the careful wrapping of JonBenét's body, suggests an emotional connection to the victim, which is inconsistent with the profile of an opportunistic intruder. In recent years, cold case units and independent investigators have revisited the JonBenét Ramsey case using advanced forensic technologies. In 2016, Boulder police announced plans to reanalyze DNA evidence using next-generation sequencing, which could provide a more comprehensive genetic profile. This technique has proven successful in solving other cold cases, such as the Golden State Killer, and has renewed hope for a breakthrough. Moreover, the rise of citizen sleuths and online communities dedicated to true crime has kept the case in the public eye. Crowdsourced investigations have unearthed overlooked details and raised new questions, but they have also contributed to the spread of misinformation and unsubstantiated theories. The balance between public involvement and professional investigation remains delicate. The handling of the JonBenét Ramsey case offers critical lessons for law enforcement and the criminal justice system. Among the most glaring issues were the procedural missteps that compromised the integrity of the investigation. The failure to secure the crime scene, combined with the mishandling of evidence, highlights the importance of adherence to established protocols. The case also underscores the challenges of balancing media scrutiny with investigative priorities. While media coverage can generate public interest and tips, it can also lead to sensationalism that undermines the pursuit of justice. The Ramseys' vilification in the press serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of rushing to judgment based on incomplete information. Finally, the case exemplifies the potential of forensic advancements to transform cold case investigations. DNA technology, in particular, continues to evolve, offering new opportunities to revisit unresolved mysteries. As science progresses, so does the hope that JonBenét's killer may one day be identified. JonBenét's death was a tragedy that shattered her family and captivated the world. Her case has become a symbol of the complexities and pitfalls of modern criminal investigations. Decades later, the unanswered questions surrounding her murder continue to inspire debates, documentaries, and investigations. For the Ramsey family, the pain of losing JonBenét is compounded by the weight of public suspicion and the absence of closure. For the public, her case serves as a reminder of the fragility of justice and the enduring impact of a single act of violence. As we reflect on JonBenét's life and the legacy of her case, one hope remains, that the truth will one day come to light, bringing justice for JonBenét and peace to those who loved her. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss any of our videos. We bring you the most intriguing and mysterious true crime stories. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this content, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Join us on this journey to uncover the truth today.